One of the things that we like to do on our farm to monitor our fields is do some plant tissue analysis to see why the good areas are good, why the poor areas are poor, and really to find the answer to a lot of the problems that happen out in the fields.
Yeah, so let's step back about 10, 12 years when we very first started doing tissue analysis. Right before that, and what led us to starting this whole process was every year we'd get to the end of the season, we'd say, man, our crop looks so good. Why are we getting poor yield, especially in corn? Because, I mean, as farmers in the Midwest, corn is like the #1 thing we want to get top yields on. And so Darren and our dad and I would sit around and we'd say, well, what do we do? I don't know. What should we do? I don't know. We must need more nitrogen. Let's put more nitrogen on. So every year we'd be putting more nitrogen on, more nitrogen. Okay, well, how far do you think that got us? All right, so we started doing this plant tissue sampling where you'd pull leaves off the plant, send it in for analysis. And I can just tell you that that first year, I did not look forward to seeing the results because every week it was exactly the same. It would be excessive on nitrogen and completely deficient on potassium, boron, and zinc. I mean, week after week, excessive on nitrogen, deficient on potassium, boron, and zinc. Now, excessive doesn't do you any good, okay? That's a waste of money. And obviously deficient, that's costing you yield. So the very next year, we didn't have to spend any more money on fertilizer. We just took some of our dollars out of the nitrogen, put it into potassium, boron, and zinc, and what do you think magically happened with yield? Our yields went up. Since we hadn't spent any more money, obviously our profits went up too. So that's what we're trying to get at with this tissue analysis. It helps you better define where you should be investing your fertilizer dollars. You don't always have to spend more money. We just want you to spend it or invest it more wisely.
Now hold on there. Plant tissue analysis is no silver bullet. It's not gonna just magically with a few leaves tell you how to change your whole farm. It's a little bit of a process. Now when I say that, plant tissue analysis costs about 20 bucks a sample. And what we suggest doing and what we've done on our farm is pick a field or maybe two. Take a good area of the field and a poor area of the field, and over a 10 or 12 week period during the summer, just take a sample each week and track those nutrients and how they move. So maybe like Brian said, it's easy and you see, oh, every week I'm excessive on one nutrient and I'm deficient on another. That's a pretty simple solution. But maybe you see, hey, everything looked good early, but then wow, as that plant got bigger, this thing started to tail off. And that's what a lot of guys are seeing. You know, maybe your nutrient is potassium, just for example. And you say, wow, I looked pretty good early in the season on my tissue test, but then as we got a little bit later and the crop started drawing more out of the soil, I ran out. So I know, hey, I need to put a little bit more into potassium on my farm in order to be successful.
So one of the common questions we get is, when should I be doing this plant tissue analysis? Let's take corn, for example. When do you suggest I start and when should I end?
Well, with corn and wheat, I would say you start right away. As soon as you've got a couple of leaves on that plant, that's a good time to start. Just clip the plant off at ground level, bring a few plants in. You know, it may take 20 to 40 plants, depending on the size of the plant. Take those in for a sample each week. Now, as the plant gets bigger, when corn gets big, you may end up just taking one leaf. And with wheat, you may end up just taking some flag leaves or something like that. But early on in the season, you're actually going to take the whole plant.
Yep, so if you go to our website at agphd.com, under the resources page, we have information there on how you can do your plant tissue sampling and which leaves specifically you need to pull for different crops. Let's talk about soybeans real quick. When do you suggest I start tissue sampling in soybeans?
Well, soybeans are a little different. When you look early in the season, a lot of times your plant tissue analysis will show, hey, everything's fine, because the plants aren't really drawing that many nutrients out of the ground. When it really starts to get critical is once we've reached flowering. So as soon as we get to flowering, which in our part of the world happens around the 4th of July, once we're to that point, the plants are pulling so many nutrients out of the ground, trying to do it so fast, that's where you start to see what the real story is in soybeans.
Okay, and with this plant tissue analysis, when you get the information, what should you do with it?
Well, with plant tissue analysis, here's the thing. I say, wait a minute, I'm not a soil scientist, I'm not a lab technician, I don't know what all this stuff means, and I don't know if I have 0.42% potassium in my plant. Is that good or is that not good? So the labs do a nice job of helping you out. With the lab we're working with, on the test it'll show what the normal level should be. It's pretty easy to see that, especially when the labs categorize, are you sufficient, are you deficient, are you excessive, where are you at?
Okay, but should you be going out side dressing, foliar feeding? What should you do to correct the problem?
Okay, well, if you're going to do this, let's just say you're early on in the season in your wheat crop and you say, wow, I'm a little bit short on this or that. You have some time to get things done and you could address those problems this year. But let's say you're looking at your soybeans and now it's mid-August and you realize, oh no, I was way short in this nutrient or that nutrient, it's probably too late to fix that problem. Now for our farm, a lot of times what we'll do with plant tissue analysis is we'll see how it plays out for the year. We'll say, you know what, we're making the best decision for this year, we'll put that fertility program out, and then, you know what, we'll see what our plant tissue analysis looked like, and if we were wrong, hey, you know what, we should have done something a little different. We take our medicine, and then the next year, we go out and we make changes to that program.
Okay, so in summary, with this plant tissue analysis, we really strongly encourage you to do it because it helps you tweak your fertility program over time and make your investments better, so you have at least some data in terms of where to put your fertilizer dollars. And the biggest thing is, we're only going to spend a few $100s, maybe $1,000 this year on plant tissue analysis, but it gives me so much information. When we're going out on our farm spending $500,000 or more on fertilizer, I'm certainly willing to invest $1,000 in tissue samples.
Well, here's the other thing. You can use plant tissue analysis to help you solve some of your problems in your fields. And what I mean is this, get the real answer to what's going on. Like for example, last year, I know a number of farmers that had the same corn hybrid in multiple fields. One field had a lodging issue. Now you may say, well, they probably had some wind in that area. Come on. It's right across the road, the rows are facing the same direction and everything. There's something else going on there. And what we found in a lot of cases is there was one nutrient or another that was drastically short in one field and just fine in the other. In many cases, it ended up being potassium. In our area, normally guys say, well, our potassium tests are high. Why could it be potassium? That doesn't necessarily mean that your soil test levels are going to get into your plant. That's what plant tissue analysis tells you, how many of those nutrients are actually making it into the plant. So don't just think, well, I do soil sampling, I don't need to look at plant tissue analysis. No, you're only getting half of the story. You know what's out there in the ground, you don't know what's making it into your plant.
So plant tissue analysis is an important step toward getting high yields. Another important step is controlling our weed of the week. Can you identify this week's weed?